Welcome to New Dimes Radio. I'm Renna Al-Yassini.
And I'm Kristen Brillantes. And clearly we're very excited to be here. Renna and I started our company, New Dimes, and now the podcast for folks like us, first-gen breadwinners redesigning our relationships to money and how to move it for our communities. When I first met you, Renna, you asked me, why don't people talk about money more, like how we've been talking about it? Because I know I wasn't outside of my household. My mom was definitely like, these conversations don't leave the house, even though we're having them transparently at home. And I'm just both nervous, but also excited to be practicing talking about this shit out loud with you. You always talk about how money was the other family member in your household. And so in the spirit of that, before we get to our wonderful guest, Adrienne Marie Brown, I wanted to ask, how are you and your money doing today?
We have been working on end-of-life planning with my parents.
The we being the me.
We being me and my parents, who, you know, God bless them, still alive, still kicking, very much active people, but like nothing in order. So it's been tough, especially when neither one of them really wants to talk about money, especially in specifics, especially with their child. And they have different mindsets and approaches around it. But yeah, we've been working through their will and setting up a trust, which, as you know, requires extreme transparency about one's finances. And with my Arab father, you just don't share that shit, especially with your kids. So it's been a lot. But they came and actively participated, which I was very impressed with. I wasn't sure. I thought it would be a little bit more of force, but they participated and were very transparent.
Yeah. Both of them? Like, how about your mom?
Yeah. My mom is like classically sort of, I would say, gendered, financially avoidant. And so, yeah, for my adult life, she is very much kind of like, oh, you know, money.
It's somewhere there.
It's very upsetting. We don't have enough.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to think about it because thinking about how fucking poor we are is depressing. And it sucks because, of course, and we've talked about this a lot with dads, like my dad is highly educated, immigrated to this country when I was 10, has worked so fucking hard. My mom's super educated, also in her own way worked very hard, and like just life did not turn out the way they thought it was going to. And it's been, you know, like just fraught with emotion. My dad's got a lot of what I perceive as shame around it all, about not being able to leave really anything behind for us.
Yeah. So you've got like that whole lifetime of unprocessed emotion that you're sorting through too.
Yeah.
As you're facilitating this with them.
It's been, you know, high emotion around everything. And it's been so interesting, again, to see what I inherited from them, and then also what I've really been working to challenge and be more honest and critical about. You know, like, is that my shit or is that their shit? And I can leave it at our house back there, and I don't need to bring it with me to my life and my family that I'm building.
This is the first-gen breadwinner experience and the first-gen breadwinner math that we always have to do of how do we make this the least emotionally taxing and also least financially consuming process.
Yeah.
As typically like the facilitators of all of this. And I know when I did the same thing for my parents right before the pandemic, of facilitating their trust writing process, it was incredibly overwhelming. And I just like didn't really have anybody else to talk to about it at the time. And so I just carried that with myself. But then I met you, and I have now actually somebody I can talk to about this stuff. And even though our parents were on different timelines of setting up something as complex and spicy as this end of life plan, being able to have somebody to chat with about it, just about like the emotional experience of it all and like the energy it takes. And every time I come to you with how am I doing with me and my money today? You're always like, yeah, why don't more people talk about this?
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer, but we're trying to have an answer by having this space where we practice doing it.
And I think it's so important to talk about this shit out loud, especially for women, especially first-gen women, because otherwise it's just this like very fraught, very emotional, tender for most of us place when it comes to what we've seen our families have to navigate. And the other part too of like just really understanding that what seems like pervasive sense that it could all disappear. We are all one bad decision away from losing everything, is so universal for all of us. And so it's so valuable to kind of break that taboo and talk very frankly about our money.
Yeah. You and I feel like sometimes we have like the same dad in terms of like money lessons, like the things that I almost feel like they're projecting onto us. They have all of these things that they have regret around, and they're like, well, I don't know if this is how it is for you, but my dad's like, you will not make these mistakes. And so he's been so transparent with me about everything in a way that can feel really overwhelming at times, because you're like, well, I cannot be the embodiment of like never making a mistake in my life. But it's, again, like a blessing and a curse to have that experience with my dad.
It's been so interesting because so much of our dads are alike. And then there are also very different. But I think what both of us came out of it with is, you know, a lot more awareness about the systems that we're operating in, and also a desire in our own different but same ways of not wanting to participate in those systems the way that they demand of us. And when we were in the early days of planning New Dimes Radio, I knew I wanted to talk to Adrienne Maree Brown because I wanted to get her point of view on those tensions, on what do we do with the tension of we are profiting literally off of participating in this capitalist system. We don't agree with the system. It's so damaging. It comes at such a high cost, and want to see systems that actually align with one's values. So I really loved that we were able to dig into that conversation, and you two vibed off of the dads and like dadding.
Yeah.
And it would not have been but for relationships like the ones I have with you and exposure to people like Adrienne Maree Brown, who is literally reimagining in a number of ways what life could look like and what society could look like and what community could look like, that I would have gotten to the place that I've gotten to personally. And so it was just such a rich conversation. She's a complete visionary.
Yeah, I really love that she also was making some points around you don't have to wait to become like super, super wealthy or a mega millionaire or mega billionaire to affect the change that you want to see in the world. She can really just make it less overwhelming and something that you feel like you can have true agency around. And Renna, you have a personal relationship with her, right?
I do. Yeah, we met when we were wee young things back at the New Organizing Institute's inaugural training that they had in Washington, D.C. She was my roommate there. And we got really, really high and had a very high conversation about, do you burn the whole thing down and rebuild something completely different, or do you work from the inside of the systems to change them? And here we are 18 years later.
That's amazing. The first time I got exposed to Adrienne and introduced to her and her world of thinking was when I had a friend who was really like supporting me through re-examining like my values and what I inherited from my dad in terms of beliefs, and especially like what I wanted to keep for my own and make new. And he encouraged me to read Adrienne's book, Pleasure Activism. And when I did, just like my whole world just fucking shifted. And then ever since then, I'm just like, hey, you're having a birthday? Here's a gift. This is a book you should read. And it was just amazing because it was reading that book and then now also being in all of like the social channels where she's like posting stuff live, it's been incredible to have her voice, a voice like hers in my head, asking me like, how am I doing? Like, what do I want? And, you know, when you're surrounded by a family who is mostly teaching you one set of beliefs, like her voice was that auntie that I never had, but wish I did.
I love that. I know she has that impact on people. And she has so much great work that she's put out into the world. She's the author of several books, such as Emergence Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds. She had an essay in the book Women Talk Money. She just wrote a piece of nonfiction, a novel called Grievers, and many other books. She's a doula. She's working on a tarot deck. She's a facilitator. She's a podcaster. She has a few different podcasts, but my favorite is the one that she has with her sister Autumn called How to Survive the End of the World. And she really has become such an important voice to so many people during these dark, dark times.
She's just been this contributor and leader to us figuring out how the fuck we make sense of what's happening in the world and what else could be possible.
When we caught up with her, she was telling us about being a first-time homeowner and yet another offering that she has to share with all of us. Adrienne, what are you up to now?
I'm making music, Renna. I think that's the thing right now that feels the most vibrant is like I'm finding all these different ways to make music, and I'm just beginning to think about a fashion line.
Yeah,
I want to make a fat fashion line where it's like designed for fat bodies, and maybe we do smaller sizes, all the things. So we'll see. It's a dream right now, but that's how my stuff always starts out.
Yeah.
You're like an expert at curating your plate with only dreams.
I'm just like, what else do I want to wear? What do I want to do? What do I want to hear? What do I want to read?
Yeah.
You know?
And then you go out and you make it. And that's amazing.
Toni Morrison said, if you don't see it, you got to make it. Paraphrase.
You're also a new homeowner, are you not?
It's true. I am. As of June 2023. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So it's the home I'm in right now. I moved to Durham, North Carolina in 2021. And I didn't think buying a house, it hasn't like been a life goal of mine. And I'm the last person in my family to buy a home in my immediate family. Years passed and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I really like being able to just call someone when the toilet is clogged. I'm good. And then, finally someone sat me down and did the math with me. And I was like, oh gosh, wait. I need to buy a home immediately.
That's really cool. Especially I hear more and more from people that, especially when you're like now entering a space where you're like, this is a goal, this is something that feels really aligned, that things really do just unfold in very surprising timing.
Yeah.
That's like, again, just beautiful timing and must have been really powerful signal for you to feel like, okay, this must be the right step.
Yeah, it felt like the right, it's actually interesting too. I feel like I've been learning so much about what risks to take and like where to invest my resources after years of not knowing how to do that. So I feel like for years I was sort of like, I don't know nothing about money. Like, I don't know, which meant that it was really easy for other people to just kind of take my money from me in different ways. I had this whole dance with the IRS that was really intense. And I just had to grow up around money in like this last 5-7 years. I talked to several people. I was like, am I ready to buy a house? Like, you look at my financial picture. I'm recovering from what happened with the IRS. I really want it to be a solid, smart investment. And so by the time it was time, it was like, I have what I need to make a good down payment. I have what I need to pay for the legal team.
Was it hard to ask for help?
I was so rebellious as a young person. My dad was in the military, and I'm a direct action organizing, anarchist, socialist, anti-war. Like, that's who I am. So the idea of asking my dad for support, like not financial support, but just like, can you help me through this process? I don't understand it. And can you help me through it in a way that still aligns with my values was it took a long time to get to a place where I was like, I'm going to ask my dad. And in fact, I'm going to be really joyful in asking him. Like, and I know it's going to make his day. Like, I know it's going to make his life, right? It feels really like healing for us. And then I felt really good about like being like, Dad, I don't know how to do this part. Here's my values. Like, can you help me? And it ended up being a really sweet, like, bonding experience for us because my dad grew up in poverty, and he's really the first generation to get out of it and to get to a place of real fiscal stability. He has financially supported almost everyone in his family in different ways. And we grew up with that sense of there's always more than just your immediate people that you're responsible for. And so he's been that kind of patriarchal figure for a lot of people. But I was like, not me. I don't believe in any of that. So yeah, it was just this really sweet thing to be like, Dad, no, really. Like, the guy is saying this and I don't know what that means. And like, just having someone who's like, I'm willing to get in the trenches of this contract and decipher it for you.
Your dad and my dad have a very similar spirit. And if your dad is anything like my dad, it must have felt like such a gift to be able to show up for a very independent daughter.
Exactly.
And be like, oh, I still have something to give.
I have something to give, right? Like, to me, I don't think that I would have any abundance without the kind of relationships that I've been in, because it's really, we have a lot of transparent talks. Yeah, like the first time my dad was like, you should be investing. And I was like, the only thing you can invest in is tobacco and guns. And I don't believe in any of that. And I'm not doing it. But even that landscape has changed radically in the last 20 years.
Yeah, so many more interesting and emerging options.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm into reinvesting, like, things that flow back into my community. It's like, oh, I can invest in all women's things. I can invest in marijuana. I can invest in projects that are about land ownership for Indigenous peoples. There's different things. But it's been really sweet. It was the same. I also got interested in basketball the same year. So it was just like a really good dad year.
Oh, but
yeah. I love everything that you're saying right now, because you're kind of giving an example of what this other definition of wealth and living wealth means. But there was somebody who said to me before that wealth isn't just the accumulation of money, even though that's what some systems teach you, but wealth is what you do with it. And I learned about this term, in vivo inheritance. So it's like what you pass on while you're alive.
Yes.
And so even you giving the example of your dad sitting with you, transferring knowledge to you, like, that's in vivo wealth transfer. Even if it's not the exact dollar, or even everything that you're doing in terms of like the production into the world of ideas, the tangible impact, that's like literally wealth transfer, wealth activated in this lifetime. And I have like goosebumps listening to you.
I was just going to say, I really love that language for it, because I also feel like, I grew up in a political framework that was like, each one teach one. Like, everything we figure out about survival, you turn around and you make sure that the people behind you know about it, whoever else is coming. And then you also make more space. And so, for instance, in the publishing world, I'm like, okay, I'm doing publishing, I'm negotiating, I'm landing a contract that feels really like it allows me to make the most resource out of what I've put into it. And I work with a small publisher, so I don't get the big advance. So everything for me happens in the royalties. It happens as the books start to move in the world. But I negotiated well so that when the books start to move in the world, a lot of which is happening because I'm pushing it, those resources flow back to me.
I love that framing, those resources.
But I was like, I would be remiss if I just negotiated a good royalties contract for myself, but didn't make sure that the other people who are coming up behind me also got that. So it's like, oh, if you're being published by the Emergent Strategy series, you're going to have access to a good contract where you're going to get good royalties, right? And it's small stuff like that. But I do think that it's how I was, anything that I know how to do, someone like looked after me and was like, hey girl, like, don't do it that way. Do it this way.
Right. That's so key to our mission with New Dimes. Not everyone has that kind of built-in network. So we really focus on filling in those relationship gaps. Would you say that your commitment to that kind of practice is central to your politics?
My alignment, my belief system has been very anti-capitalist. And so to be an anti-capitalist who is trying to survive and build ideas and grow ideas in a capitalist world, I had to, it's just been a journey of being like, oh, I have to stop aiming at poverty. I have to start aiming at abundance. and being like, what we're trying to do is actually create a politic where abundance is everybody's birthright and everybody's experience. And that means I have to get more comfortable with what it means to be in abundance with integrity.
Yeah. To receive it, to put it in action, to like help other people to feel comfortable in it too. Yeah.
I want to circle back to your dad and family.
Yeah.
I was binging on your podcast, How to Survive the End of the World. And you had this tiny little exchange with Autumn where you were like, Autumn, you love money. And she had this wave of what I interpreted as like pleasure, like deep, warm pleasure.
Yes.
And she was like, yes, I really do.
Yeah.
How did you two, you're in the same family, like how did you grow up around what was told to you about wealth, rich people, money? Like how did you two?
I mean, my dad's Black. My dad comes from a lineage of Black people in Pendleton, South Carolina. So my dad comes from, what would be externally defined as poverty, economically defined as poverty. Grew up in a community where there was a lot of love and a lot of people taking care of each other and taking care of each other's kids. He's the oldest of 7 kids. And so we grew up with, from him, a really intense work ethic, a really intense sense of saving, and a really intense sense of like, you have to generate what you can in a lifetime. No one's going to give it to you. And stability matters, and doing things the right way matters. Okay. And then my mom is white, Southerner, grew up in North Augusta, South Carolina, on a farm. And they were middle class and would tip it to upper class. Like, they would have moments where it was like, oh, this is a good year. We're buying horses. Or this is a good year. You're going to get a pearl necklace when you turn 16. Then there's years that weren't good.
Horses and pearls.
Horses and pearls, okay? But they met across a great class divide. And my mom, she's a Sagittarius, like Capricorn cusp. So her, like literally the whole sky of the stars says, you're going to love money and you're going to be good at managing it.
We love a good connection between the stars and our financial futures.
Yeah. And my dad was really like, I think about investment. I think about money in this way. And it's been beautiful over the course of our lives to watch them grow towards each other and grow towards a common understanding of resources. So we grew up in that environment where it was like, you work really hard for what you get and you treat what you get well. So I really feel like in some ways we grew up in that pocket of enoughness. Like it was like, we're good. We've got just what we need. And we're still able to help out the rest of the family. And the older I got, the more I understood that really we were a family of at least 11, even though we were living as a family of 5.
Yeah, that's such a familiar experience for firsts and families and their descendants.
Exactly. But when I went to college, I got politicized hardcore into anti-capitalist socialist perspective of the world, right? I was like, capitalism is antithetical to existing on Earth. I got a real sense of like, as a species, if we want to have a place here, we have to figure out some other way of relating to each other because this is not going to do it. And I came home and was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I was like, I don't even need Christmas, but that was a bridge too far, even for me. I was like, I love presents. What am I talking about? I love Christmas. It's like one of my favorite things.
I bet your family loved that. What about your sisters? Did they have a similar journey to yours when it comes to money?
I will say that Autumn, as the youngest, you can see in a family the difference that 4 or 5 years makes in terms of an economic reality. So, from the time I went off to school to the time that my sister went off to school, even in that period of time, it was a different economic reality for my family. And then, Autumn is a Sag. She does love money. But I also think one of the biggest differences in our lives, she got married and started having kids in her early 20s. I was single during that time or, dating during that time. But there was never like, I wasn't doing anything where I was like, I'm trying to share resources with anyone. I'm just me, myself, and I, and traveling, partying, doing what I want to do. I don't need a lot. And for many, many years, I made $30,000 a year. And I was like, this is great. I'm fine. I have a tiny little shoebox apartment in New York. I'm good. I have a tiny little spot in Oakland. I'm good. And at that same time, she was, I have 1 child, 2 child, 3 child. I need money. I need it.
Yeah.
And they were struggling. She was struggling. And so a lot of my income was also always making sure that I had some that was going to support her. And then the other friends in my life who had children early, like we all became part of the community of support for those kids, right? That I'm like, I'll pay for karate lessons here, or I'll pay for therapy here, or I'll pay for just whatever money. Here's some grocery money,
Yeah.
And I felt like that spirit that I learned from my dad, which is, if you have it, share it.
I was about to say that. I was like, that's your dad coming out.
Exactly. It's like, it's not yours to just hold on to and hoard when people need it. And it's really good to know how to accumulate it and let it accumulate so that it can cover more people.
Yeah. It's been really powerful to hear you talk about watching your parents, right, as you're growing up and their dynamic and their relationship, and then hearing you transition into like getting very politicized in college. I think it's one of the reasons why I never thought, even for me in my career, that I'd have a chance to make change. I was raised similarly in some instance of like what you shared of work hard, and you're working hard to be able to take care of your village. Like literally, I have hundreds of family members in the Philippines where you're like just sending buy-in boxes and money that way.
Yes.
But then when you start to get into environments where you have independence, where you're surrounded by people who have freedom of thought and are asking you, now, what do you think? I found myself not having like an answer for myself, So I'm curious, like, how did you start to develop your own perceptions and own beliefs about money and what you want to do with it, and then how that bridged into your work and even some of the examples you were sharing earlier about like resisting and the tax situation, like your tax dance. I'm very curious about that.
Honey. Well, I actually think I would say that I've learned every lesson in whatever the hardest possible way to learn it was.
Many of us
So
have.
it's been like
100%. That's what you do see. Yes. That is like a universal truth for us first. Is the very expensive mistakes.
Mistakes.
Constant like learning of just new worlds. Yeah.
That my parents could not find out about because they would be like,
apoplectic.
Well, what did I tell you?
There you
go. But then early, like right after college, all the stuff was kicking off with the Iraq War. Like the time that I met Renna, I had been politicized. In 2003, I was out like doing direct actions, being like, I've got to by myself somehow stop the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq. I've got to do something. And I became a war tax resistor, but I don't like money. So I didn't go about it in any kind of organized way, because that would have meant having to really think about money. So like organized ways are like, I'm going to make less than $14,000 a year so that I literally don't have to pay taxes, or I'm going to get involved with a group that's organized around tax resistance. That would have been awesome. Instead, what I did was like, fuck you, IRS. I'm going to write you a letter every year at tax time, and I'm going to tell you that until you develop a way for me to direct my taxes in ways that go to education and infrastructure and things that actually support this community, and not to, at that point, the 60% of it that was going into war funds or whatever. I'm like, if I can't opt out of that, I'm not paying. And it felt like a real righteous thing. I slept really well at night. It was awesome. I did it for like 13 years. And every year I kept being like, they're going to call me at some point and be like, hey, girl,
respond to my letters.
Someone's going to respond to my letter and be like, you know what? You're right. Here's how we made a new way for you, right? We made something. And although I'm sure if they did, it would be kind of like the fake recycling map or something. It's like, I'm like, I really want a real solution for this. And I do think, I still believe in tax resistance as a strategy that we should deploy at large scale levels to make change. But the way it fell out for me was I was doing it so individually. And then they caught me as an individual. And I found out because I went to check out of a grocery store and my bank accounts were all empty and nothing was working. And I called the IRS and I got on with this older man from New York. It was just like, you got to pay your taxes. You can't not pay your taxes. I'm sorry. I hear you. No, it's like, I mean, it's great. Everybody thinks different things and feels different things, but you got to pay your taxes. I don't know, And just being like, oh, bureaucracy doesn't have room for this kind of nuance. It doesn't have room for my politics. It's making very political decisions. That became so clear to me that I'm like, oh, I, as a citizen of this country, am required to pay into a system where the only way for me to direct what happens with that system is a very corrupt electoral process. So that feeds into a lot of my politic is like, oh, we need to be doing emergent strategies that allow us to form relationships, that allow us to transition the conditions that we're in together, and that allow us to keep more and more of our resources flowing within community rather than flowing out towards the things we don't believe in. But hard lessons. Like I don't wish upon anyone the experience of going from I think I've got it to nothing. Luckily, I had built a safety net in for myself. I had given my parents some money to hold on to because I was going to try to buy a little writing cottage, and that thing fell through. So I was like, whew, right? And that's what got me through that period.
I mean, again, in this story that you're sharing, it's like this interesting stark difference too of having to go at it alone because that's what we thought we could do, right? Like if no
Yes.
one else is going to care about it in the ways that I care about it, I'm going to have to do this myself in the ways that I know how.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, families of generational wealth build teams around them
They
that
built
do
teams. Yeah.
things that they call it tax strategy versus like tax resistance. And I'm like,
Yes.
how do we apply like that imagination and that creativity for us that aren't about just hoarding wealth, but actually like there's only so much you can do to shift the whole system. But while we're existing in it, like to have a tax strategist, for example, so that no one has to do this thing alone.
Yeah.
Like how can people think about that and apply it more to their lives?
I mean, I don't I don't know yet on the largest scale. I feel like I'm still kind of befuddled by what we do at the largest scale. So whenever that happens for me, I try to find a smaller place for the experimentation to happen. So COVID, the process of moving through COVID felt like one of those small experimental places where the economy was kind of a mess. And what I learned in that period was enough is only actually enough if it can serve the community. And I'm pretty sure that my dad taught me this, but it's like if you're going to give money to someone, always give it as a gift. Always give it as something that's just like, I'm not expecting this back. Even when people are like, can I get a loan from you? Don't just be like, let it flow, right? I'm like, if they don't have it now, they probably just give it to them. And if they can, like I've had sometimes the money would come back and that would be cool. But if more often than not, if you don't expect it back, then it's just a nice gift if it ever does make it back. But mostly it's like, I just want to pour this in because the system is not balanced. We have to do that in our relationships. And there's a really cool book that Dean Spade put out about mutual aid that is part of how I saw people and I see people more and more often. It's not new, right? It's a way that we have always survived colonization. We've always survived patriarchal racist capitalism. We've always survived genocidal attempts to erase us, is that we have figured out how to create a system through which the resources can move within our communities rather than constantly coming in and out, in and out, in and out.
Yes, like building off the age-old practices of lending circles or susus or tandas. The existing systems weren't open to folks, so they had to create their own within their communities.
Yeah, totally. And now we can create them too.
Yeah. So some of the things I see strategically that are happening right now is a lot of people in my community and in the organizing community I'm part of are buying land and buying homes and buying property and buying things that are that help us create an equity amongst our folks where it's like, maybe you have it, maybe you don't, but we can all contribute to this space. Here in my actual home, I bought this home that I have designed as a writing retreat for myself, knowing that whenever I'm away, other writer is here also writing. So it feels like I've created something that is like a community resource that takes care of my needs as a writer. And now I can feel the calm of being like, I don't have to keep stressing about moving every 2 years or figuring out, I'm just like, this is where I'm rooting into here. And I love that way of thinking of the things that we own or accumulate is I'm getting this as a part of a community that is acquiring the things that we need for the long haul. The other thing I wanted to name is getting more transparent with the people you're in community with about what happens with your money over time. So I have several friends that are written into my like last will and testament. I have several friends that are written to my life insurance policies. These are people who mostly are the people in my life who have children that maybe they don't have a stable financial source in their lineage at this point. And so when their grandparents die, they're not really going to get something from that. Or when their parents die, they're not really going to get something from that. So it's like, okay, rich auntie supreme for life, like, I'm like, I got you. Like,
You're
it
really
happens to
doing
me,
it.
right? And then trying to have more explicit conversations with people that are like not charitable. Where it's like, if I've got it, you've got it. So like, let's talk openly about, it's tax season. Do you have it? Does everybody have what they need? Are you talking to the right, folks to help you? Because otherwise you just feel stupid. And I think so many people they're kept away from the abundance that is possible for them just because they're like, I don't feel smart at the system. Well, that's on purpose. It's all designed to obscure and to keep you from accessing the resources because the people who do speak that language, they made it for themselves to be the only ones who understand it. So the more of us that like demystify it, and it's like one little thing, I was like, let me tell you everything I just learned.
Yes.
You can have the wisdom of my dad as well, even if you don't have a dad, right? Or you don't have a dad like mine.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a whole chosen family model. I love that.
Yeah. Chosen family for the win.
We're coming to a close, and we wanted to be sure to ask you one thing before we go.
Okay.
At the end of your essay in Composting Capitalism in Women Talk Money, you speak to the fact of wrestling or existing with money flowing towards you.
Yes.
Where are you with that? What are the lessons that you are having to learn and what you're coming up against as money is flowing towards you?
So as I was thinking about coming into this talk with y'all, I was really trying to think like, how much resource have I generated in my lifetime? And it's millions of dollars that I've actually generated in my lifetime, but very little of that has actually like come to me, to my pocket, to my life. And a huge amount of it that has gone to organizations that I have fundraised for, or organizations that are using ideas that I helped move into the world. And, some of them were birthed directly through me, and some ideas I've learned and uplifted and shone a light on. But shining that light means that resources can flow. And I'm like, it's taken me a long time to take that seriously, that I'm like, oh, like I'm a vector of resource. And I should also make sure that I have some resource for myself, and really being in a self-assessment on like, what is enough? Because as soon as you start to accumulate, the capitalist shaping and training is right there being like, keep it, like hold on to that, make it more, and it's like, okay, I could either keep it or I could pour it back and like create an institute that is able to like grow something that I really care about. I could keep it or I could like make sure that all the people around me are also, able to achieve stability. And so I really think there's a dance of like, how do you get a sense of what your own enough is so that you can actually be in relationship with the rest of it in a good way? I always say that I hate politics, I hate money. And what I mean by it is I hate the systems of dominance and oppression that get executed, right, through those systems. What I love is abundance. And what I love is being able to like wake up each day and know that my needs are met. I want everyone to feel that, to wake up each day and know that it's okay. Like the work I do has value in the world. And then I get to build these projects and institutions and get to do these things where I'm like, we turn the money back into what it was meant to be, right?
Yeah.
It was meant to always be, this is the way that the resources can flow between many people who have many things to share and offer each other. And it got turned into something that was like, this is how we tell each other who's better and who's worse. This is how we close the door for some and open it for others. I want to shout out before I go my friend Jessica Norwood, who has just completed a book called Believe in You Money. And she's been someone who has been like an advisor of mine over different projects I've been in. Because can you imagine having someone who's at the helm of your organization who's like, I fucking hate money. I'm not doing any fundraising. I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay? C'est moi.
Yeah.
C'est moi. That was the leader that I've been. And meanwhile, so I'm like reluctantly making resources and reluctantly making but I'm like so excited by what we're able to make from it. And so that is finally softening in me where I'm like, I want millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars to flow through the lens of emergent strategy and pleasure activism and abolition and transformative justice and radical imagination and all those things. And so I feel like there's a way that we're like, actually, we can transform it back into what it is, which is just the energy of material resources, the energy of human labor, the energy of dreams, like those energies moving towards each other. So that's where I am right now.
I have goosebumps because it's literally like flowing and pouring it into actually being able to live and not just survive. Like it's actually pouring into like living and all the people around you trying to live
with enjoyment.
Yeah.
With it, not with pleasure, with ease.
Yeah. I mean, it really is for me, like I see it as like a joyful, pleasurable, intelligent and abundant kind of socialism. So I'm like, that's kind of the, where I'm landing with it all.
That is an amazing way to end this.
I'm so grateful y'all are doing this.
Thank you. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah. Everything in the light, y'all.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. How incredible was that?
Yes, so powerful. I just am so grateful to have had a chance to talk to Adrienne, with you, and so grateful for the incredible vision and insight she shared with us.
There were so many favorite parts, but top of mind is definitely just her talking about family legacy and history and dynamics and inherited mindsets and dads, which you two totally vibed off of.
Yeah, I think I'm always fascinated by parents and their influence on us. And when she was sharing her mom's money story and perspectives and her dad's money story and perspectives, it reminded me of the exercise you shared with me of examining where did we come up with our understanding and beliefs about wealth and what to do with it. And I don't think I ever told you this, but during the pandemic, one of my pandemic projects was organizing my parents' bookshelf, doing the millennial rainbow of the books. And it was interesting to see the books that shaped my dad's perspective about money and my mom, and then some of the books that I added to the shelf. And Adrienne talking about it really just like that visual came up for me, and how rare it is that none of us really ever take intentional time to think about that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's definitely been true for me too, in terms of even just my own relationship to money and really examining where I've gotten these ideas from and deciding whether or not I want to keep those ideas or not. And then as an adult, realizing like, I don't have that same relationship with money. Money is actually easy. I find it easy in so many ways, That was like such a huge aha moment. And so just when we do take those times to unpack all of that, which Adrienne shared with us about her relationships and the generational legacies, just it's amazing. It's really powerful stuff. I also really loved how she spoke about taking stock about how much she's generated for others.
Yeah. When she was talking about that, it again reminded me of a conversation that I was listening to about the racial wealth gap and the whole concept of in vivo inheritance. I was holding so much worry and anxiety about there might not be anything I can leave to the next generation, but to think about how Adrienne's activating her wealth in this lifetime and taking stock of that, and then hearing somebody else officially have a term for it, it makes you feel like, okay, I know what is enough in my lifetime. And if I choose to go beyond that, I can always redefine it. But there's so much value that can be generated now, and that we should, celebrate that, honor that, recognize that in each other.
Yes, 100%. I also just loved how she was, even as her fame and her notoriety is increasing, how she's really thinking about her team and challenging old structures and dynamics, and how she's even thinking about structuring her contracts so that she's really maximizing where she is the most generative and where she adds so much value other than the work, right? Which is like attention and voice and just her participation in the cultural moments and conversations, and structuring the deals so that others that are coming up behind her can also benefit from her point of view, her literal contracts that she is rewriting and designing.
Yeah. You talk about this all the time about, you give a woman some money, some ability to do something with it, and they're going to create new systems. Like, we're going to create different ways that things should be operating, just because I think all too often people will tell you, why bother to do that? It's so much extra work. But when you care in those really specific ways, so much more possibility can come from that. So I love that she shared that.
Me too. And it was like so on the vein of what we've talked about, and what's so important to New Dimes is how you flow money and energy to the people around you and within community. And I loved that we got to talk about that. And then having more conversations about what do you do about the tensions of participating in capitalism and generating the wealth this way through these systems, while you're looking to change the system. And I loved her answer when she was like, when I don't know the answer to the big system-wide question, I get very specific and hyper-local and look to my own life and own community and think about those systems. I loved all of that. And it was everything I was hoping it would be. Kristen, where can people find out about Adrienne's work?
Yes, you can find her on Instagram at Adrienne Marie Brown. She posts hilariously accurate memes there that I feel like are just medicine for the world.
The memes are delicious.
Start your day with them, better than coffee. And you can also visit her website, adriennemariebrown.net. She told us that the goal is to make every resource she's ever created accessible for free in that space.
Also, don't forget to check out our show notes for links to the books and resources we discussed in our interview. And if you can, please support your local indie booksellers. Thanks, y'all, for listening to New Dimes Radio. We hope you enjoyed listening, and we'd love to hear from you. You can find us at newdimes.co/radio and new_dimes on Instagram.
New Dimes Radio is produced by Adolph Stones and Philos Future Media. Executive produced by us, Kristen Brillantes, Renna Al-Yassini, and Keisha TK Dutes.
Kristen Bennett is our producer. This episode is mixed and sound designed by Erica Huang.
Until next time, take care of yourselves.